Good morning. This is a lesson to look at the definitions of abnormality on the AQA Paper 1. This lesson is to look at the definition of abnormality as failure to function adequately. So by the end of this session, you should be able to describe what failure to function adequately means and to be able to evaluate this definition. So when we look at failure to function adequately, we basically look at whether somebody can cope with the demands of everyday life. And if somebody cannot, then we would say that they cannot function adequately in society. So we would define abnormality as anything that interferes with the functioning of everyday life. So people can't function adequately when they cannot meet the basic standards of nutrition. So they forget to eat, they are not able to feed themselves, anything to do with nutrition, eating all of the wrong foods. If you cannot hold down a job. So it's good to have examples of these because AQA would like you, when you're giving a definition, to explain it using an example. So you could say, failure to function adequately is when someone can no longer cope with the demands of everyday life. For example, they cannot hold down a job. So this would be somebody who cannot, according to this definition, meet the basic needs of what's considered normal in society, which would be going to work, going out every day. Unable to meet the basic standards of hygiene. Lots of people who are considered to have a mental illness often do not look after themselves and their personal care. And that would be one of the issues here. Again, another example of failure to function adequately. You might find that people cannot maintain relationships, so they either cannot hold down a relationship, a romantic or a friendship. They allow relationships to lapse, they don't get in contact with anyone, just difficult to actually form any kind of friendship or relationship with. So in 1989, Rosenhan and Seligman proposed the following signs that can be used to determine whether somebody is coping or not. So if the person can no longer conform to standard interpersonal rules, so someone who cannot maintain eye contact, someone who does not understand personal boundaries, someone who does not respond in an appropriate manner, so any interpersonal rules. When they cause distress to themselves or discomfort to others. And this is actually one of the features of the section of the Mental Health Act. If somebody becomes a danger to themselves or others, they can often be deemed suitable for sectioning. So this is a milder version of that. If somebody starts to cause distress to themselves or to people around them. So this could be threatening suicide, it could be constantly crying. It's just somebody who is constantly harm or in distress all the time. Also, unpredictability. Somebody who is a bit out of control, their behaviour is unpredictable, because generally as humans we are quite predictable in the way that we behave. Irrationality. The behaviour is irrational and hard to understand. Arguments that don't need to be had. Not resolving issues properly, having a point of view that doesn't make sense, that kind of thing. And maladaptiveness. This is where things interfere with your daily routine. So, for example, ritualistic behaviour, where you have to turn the light on and off that many times that you cannot manage to get out of the room, or having to go and check the door whether it's locked. So these are all examples of failure to function adequately. So just relating to a slide that we looked at earlier, when we looked at statistical deviation, we said that Dave would be considered abnormal because he had a very low IQ of below 55, and therefore he would be considered abnormal because of that and possibly diagnosed with intellectual disability disorder. If we take the same person but with a different definition, he would not be considered abnormal because he is functioning adequately. Therefore, you can see that there is a difference between definitions here. He would be considered abnormal with statistical deviance, but he would not be considered abnormal with failure to function adequately. And therefore, this is one of the problems when trying to define abnormality. What you need to be able to do now is to fully explain this and explain several limitations and a strength of this. So, for example, is it culturally relative? And that's one of the main problems. Does it apply to all cultures? And obviously it doesn't, because if you take a place like Spain where they have a siesta, to sleep in the afternoon in our country would be considered abnormal, but to sleep in Spain in the afternoon would be considered perfectly normal. Again, it is completely dependent on culture. The other thing is that some people do actually manage to function adequately despite being mentally unwell. One example would be Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic when he was arrested, but prior to this, he managed to hold down a job, have a family, and nobody knew that there was a problem. Therefore, this is quite a limited definition that doesn't actually cover all areas.